Hello and welcome to today's video. So I've titled this one The Magical World of Vintage Paperbacks, and I've done that for a very specific reason, and that's because if you're a little bit on the fence or just don't know where to start within the world of vintage paperbacks, then I reckon I'm going to give you a few little pointers and maybe spur you into starting a collection of vintage paperbacks of your own. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay then, so the first thing we're going to have a little look at is collecting by publisher. So this is something that I've always really enjoyed doing, and this little batch here is some vintage corgi paperbacks. Predominantly I do collect British paperbacks, but I do also collect a handful of American publishers as well. But when I say collect them, I do mean, and you should also bear in mind, that you need to be realistic. So I pick up corgi books, I collect them, and they've got some fantastic stuff here. As you can see, these are real classic titles. But I'm a realist. I know that, even if I was to have unlimited funds, I'd very much struggle to get every single vintage corgi book. There's just too many. And, I've got maybe 100 to 150. When I come across them, and it's a good author and it's in nice condition, generally speaking, I'll pick them up. But I wouldn't say I collected them, but I would say it's a publisher I like to pick up because I like the sort of books that they produce. Another one would be Digit Books. Now this is a bit more realistic because there's only about 850 different ones of these. So theoretically, you could pick them all up. And these are just a little, towards the tail end run. These are like 60s ones. And one of the attractions of books like these is, as you'll see, they've got numbering on the spine. So this is in the days pre-ISBN, which are about 1970-71, and I generally collect books which are pre-ISBN, and they have numbers no greater than, of course, Penguin books. So as I'm sure you're aware if you've watched my channel, I collect a lot of Penguin books, and they were the first publisher I really tried to collect properly. And there's a perfect example of this: consecutive numbers, 207, 208, 209 and 210, and it shows some of the different series. You've got the biography title there, you've got the more familiar fiction, and you've got the famous crime. And collecting by publisher can be an extremely rewarding thing to do, but it can also mean that if you're trying to get like every single number, so with Penguins, there's a lot of people who just want, say, the first 100, or they say, oh, I don't care, I'm going to go for the first 1,000, and then they want them in first edition. And if you did collect the first 1,000 books, you're going to get probably a percentage of that you're never ever going to read. You're going to get crossword books, you're going to get biographies of people you've never even heard of, books of fiction that you're just not going to want to read. And that is what happens when you do collect a publisher. But on the whole, if you're a fan of that particular publisher, it can also provide some real revelations and stuff that you just didn't know that was that good. So there's swings and roundabouts. Another publisher who I absolutely love to collect is Pan Books, of course. And Pan have got that really distinctive cover art style, which I love so much. A lot of them by my favourite cover artist, Pef. And here's another example of some consecutive numbers at 384, 385, 386, 387. And you're almost tempted in a way, once you start getting a few of these together, you just sort of want to fill all the gaps in. And it's like, oh, what path have you, you've started on a path that maybe perhaps you may not have wanted to. However, I have to say, once again, it's such a rewarding hobby. And when you find a missing number that you've been after for quite a while, it can be very rewarding. Another publisher here, this is the last sort of publisher I'm showing you now, although I collect many more. This is British Fontana Books. Now I only, once again, these are numbered. This is 286, 289, 297, 319. I haven't got anything like as comprehensive a collection of Fontanas as I have other publishers, but it just gives you a little idea. They've got a very distinctive look. These are sort of the yellow, distinctive cover art as well, similar to the Pans. And this is why I really like them. They're great fun. Don't turn up that often nowadays. and I'm not particularly bothered if they're first editions. I just like nice early editions of them, and I think you can see they're a bit of fun. So collecting by publisher can be very rewarding, but you just need to bear in mind, if you think to yourself, I want to get every single book by that publisher that they ever did pre, say, 1970, research and find out exactly how many you're talking. If you're talking Pan books, you're looking at 2,000 plus books. Corgi, probably 1,000. Digit, 800, as we discussed. Penguin, pre-1970, you're looking at the best part of 4,500 books, if you include the Pelicans and the Puffin books. And Fontana, well, perhaps 600-700, but even so, bear the amount of books published in mind, because you might be just taking on an impossible task. So maybe you don't fancy collecting by publisher, but you want to collect by a particular series, or maybe even a subject. So one very, very popular area of vintage paperback collecting is books related to the James Bond series. So these are the first few in the series in sort of British paperback first edition. And I've sort of collected these. These are amongst the very earliest books that I ever collected, in actual fact. And I've always had a soft spot for them. And there's not that many, you see. So if you stick to the original Fleming books, well, that's definitely an attainable target. You may want to expand if you've done all that, and maybe start picking up books about James Bond or Ian Fleming, which weren't actual Fleming novels. So that's another little offshoot area. And there was quite a few of these sort of books about Bond that were published in the 60s, and they make great fun to track down. Some of these are quite difficult to get these days, and you might have a little bit of a job tracking some of these down. This is a real favourite. This is my dad's copy, which I ended up with. I've actually got a second printing of this as well, but it's super difficult to find with a really nice photo insert inside. But that's a couple of things. Another fun thing I like to collect, did you ever come across these or remember these photo novels? So this was in the days before home video. You would have in this case, the movie in like comic strip form, but as a photo novel. How cool is that? I would have always loved them to have done the movie Jules in photo novel, because it was about the right time, but they never did. And they did some cool stuff. This was the animated version of Lord of the Rings. It's a really, really nice one. And another, probably the most popular one in the series to this day, the most collectible one, is the movie Grease, a John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John film. They did also do 12 Star Trek novels in photo novel form, and they are geeky but great fun. Another little area I like to collect is a big comic book fan, and over the years I've pulled a real run together of comic books that have been put into paperback form. Now these are back in the day when I was growing up in like the mid-70s, I remember these very well, and the comics were quite difficult to get back then. So I've got maybe the best part of 100 different ones of these now from all sorts of publishers. I pulled out a few juicy ones. There's one for Blade Runner by one of my favourite artists, Jim Steranko. I've got about 100 of these now, and the Marvel ones in particular are really, really great. Like classic Steve Ditko reprints, and I just love them to death. So you might fancy getting a few. I reckon there's easily 100 that you could track down. There's no definitive list that I know of. It's just one that you would compile yourself. But they're great fun. They're really, really colourful on the shelf, and I certainly like them. Then going back to the temptation of numbering again. So this is a Western series that I like, and you'll see these are numbered just there, and they almost tempt you, like number 28, number 27, 26, 25. They're tempting you to collect the whole lot, aren't they? They've got these brilliant uniform covers, which I absolutely love. It's an adult Western series, and they're quite violent, but fantastic fun. I really, really enjoy the Age series. There's 61 of these in total, so once again, it's not exactly an impossibility to try and get the full set. Another series I absolutely loved was the Casca, the Eternal Mercenary, and once again numbered. Here's number 18, number 19, and number 20, and there's actually 21 in the original series, but it has been continued by various other non-Barry Sadler authors up to about number 50 now. I think even more past that. But a great series, and easy to track down. They've got that brilliant numbering, which the Americans did so well on their paperbacks, and this makes them a really interesting sort of series to collect. So of course, one of the most common ways to collect vintage paperbacks is just stick to one author, and I definitely do that. The thing about that is, of course, that like many authors, they were published by different publishers, so the books don't end up that uniform, and they can be a bit of a mixture. But one of the authors I really do like is J.G. Ballard, and his books were published by various people over the years. So these are Panther editions initially of his books, which I really like. They've got fantastic cover art. Quite collectible these nowadays, and these are really nice copies as well. And there's it's like a mid-70s one, and then there's like a early 70s edition of the same book. This is like Panther ones. In the early days, he was published by Penguin in the 1960s. So that's two different editions of the same book, the earlier 60s Penguin edition and then the 70s edition. It's got cover by David Pelham. Once again, the 60s edition and then the 70s. These are all one author. Terminal Beach. And the Terminal Beach. So yeah, if you collect one author, you can end up with a great collection, but they'll be spread out over, say, 2 or 3 different publishers, or even more, as we'll see a bit later when I dig out the Philip K. Dicks. But that gives you an idea of what you could collect if you just stick to one author. You real fantastic stuff. Now, most of these are paperback firsts. The ones that are doubles are obviously later prints, and that's the first, and then that's a later one. But if you collect one author, you don't mind later editions of the books because you're into them to begin with. So I think collecting one particular author and really specialising it can be a very rewarding thing to do as well. Now, it may be that you're into an author so much that you pick up multiple copies of their key books, and one such author for me is Ed McBain, who I really enjoy, particularly his 87th Precinct titles. So I'm currently in the process of putting together a set of the British first edition paperbacks and the early American first edition paperbacks, although I'll probably stop at the first 20 of the American ones. But I thought it might be quite fun while we're here, just to sort of show what people collect. I'll have the US first and the UK first, and you can see of the same book. So it was Cop Hair, that was the very first one, Killer's Choice. And they've both got their appeal. Killer's Payoff, there's Killer's Payoff there. Till Death. King's Ransom. They're great, aren't they? The Heckler. And the last one, Axe. And the US edition. Cool stuff, eh? Here's a few more familiar series that people collect a lot of, one of which is the Doctor Who related books. These are some of the original 1960s ones. I've had a lot of fun collecting these. Very warm place of nostalgia in my heart. And that's why in a lot of cases people collect books. It does give them the nostalgia. And there's the very first one in the fabled Target range, which was launched in 1973. Classic Star Trek and Next Gen. These are another example of publishers numbering their books. Here we are. So we've got 62 and 63, 64. They encourage you as a fan to buy every single book in the series. And I almost feel that they get a few maybe substandard books slip through the net with them actually numbering them. Another example of some great marketing done in the 60s were these Man from Uncle books. Some of these have been signed by Robert Vaughan back in the 90s. So it's like that was number 1, and then this was number 2. And these books sold a lot of copies. I'm talking, hundreds of thousands of these early books, apparently. They had American editions as well as number 3. And there's number 4. So people really do like collecting sort of TV tie-in books. They've always been a genre that I've collected ever since I've collected books, because I started on the Doctor Who books when I was a youngster growing up. They were amongst the first books I ever read right through, predominantly the ones by Terrance Dicks. And they're still incredibly popular to this day. Very, very collectible. Here's another thing that people collect a lot of, movie tie-ins. So I've, once again, always collected movie tie-ins alongside TV tie-ins, and I do absolutely love them. I pulled out a few of my favourites here. This is a US edition of Help, the Beatles' Help, published by Dell. And this is the perfect example of a real classic movie tie-in. You've got some stills. It's of the period. Pretty decent cover. Love it. Another great film, one of my favourites, The Italian Job. Troy Kennedy Martin. I think this is quite a scarce little movie tie-in. An MTI. Another great one. I thought everyone's seen the British one. I thought I'd bring down the American Get Carter. Quite hard to get hold of. Popular library. This is much harder to find than the later one. One which became very collectible on the back of the TV show. I think it's cooled down a little bit now, but this is Westworld. Another great movie tie-in with the photo insert. One of my favourite hammers, Vampire Lovers. Great one, Ingrid Pitt and Peter Cushing cover. And Midnight Cowboy, another great film. Dustin Hoffman, John Voight. So movie tie-ins, definitely a market for that. There are people who just collect movie tie-ins. There's a fantastic Twitter account called Tied In Film, and that account's actually producing a documentary on just movie tie-ins. Some people collect by artist. One of my favourites is a chap called Tom Adams. Now, he sadly departed a couple of years ago, but he lived not far from me, and from the 60s up until the early 80s, he produced a whole run of Agatha Christie's, over 60 illustrations. He did some Raymond Chandler's in the States. He did Robert Markham's Colonel Sum, the first non-Ian Fleming Bond book to be published, and he's got this really fantastic style, and this propelled these Christie's into being mega bestsellers in the 70s, even though the books have been around for years. I pulled out just a handful of my favourites, because I do love Tom Adams. I'm still collecting them now. This is perhaps one of my top 5 favourite covers ever on any vintage paperback. It's just superb. Destination Unknown. This is 1967. It says he was famous for his Salvador Dali-esque style covers, and I think he's really, really great. And this last one here, the mirror cracked from side to side. Great, great cover. So some people collect by genre. So I've got lots of sci-fi in my collection, but I do love other things as well. And one of the things I do love is horror. And in the UK, at least, one of the best remembered horror anthologies was the Pan Book of Horror. So I brought down just a few. And once again, they tick a lot of boxes because they've got great covers. They're reasonably scarce, particularly the later novels. And they're all numbered, 28, 27, 26. Which makes them eminently even more collectible because everyone wants them all. Brilliant covers, aren't they? So just something else that people collect. Another little fun series that I like is the Dell Map Packs. I've done a couple of videos on these. So these are very much gimmick. They're American books, and they're famous because they've got a map on the back of where the action, or if it's a crime book, where the murder took place. Beautiful sort of a lot of these early ones have airbrushed covers. If they're in nice condition, they've still got their laminate on. but they're most famous for this map on the back. Look at this one, Hilary Judd's house, scene of murder in The Body Missed the Boat. Here's another one here, Murder on Angler's Island. With a crime map on the back cover, and there it is. Monmouth in Graham's scene of murder in Murder on Angler's Island. And then of course some people just collect like classic books in vintage paperback form. So this is one of my all-time favorite books, Day of the Triffids. When it was published in America by Popular Library in paperback, it came out as Revolt of the Triffids, and it's got this astonishingly good painted front jacket. I mean, just incredible, really. And it's easily one of my favorite American paperbacks. And I have a few of these on display all the time because I just love them so much. Here's another real cracker. It's the original Bantam for the Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. Another real classic book. And one more here, which is another one by a crime author I like called Chester Himes. He's definitely getting the recognition that he's so long deserved these last couple of decades. And this is a paperback original of this one from Avon. Very, very scarce and collectible paperback. Good stuff, eh? So we'll have a look at another author that I like to collect whenever I come across him. And I am only scratching the surface really with this chap. But this is Philip K. Dick. You'll know him most famously as the author of Blade Runner. I try and pick these up when I come across them in nice condition. All the time, basically, because I just absolutely love them. Now, predominantly my copies are British. However, I have got a smattering of a few American ones as well. So in no particular order, this is another example of just collecting the one author. So we got The Unteleported Man. Here is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. A lot of these are paperback originals, PPOs. Here's a US one, an Ace Double. This is another thing. People love to collect these books, which are like two books in one. And there's sci-fi ones and there's highly collectible crime ones. Here's another gorgeous one, The World Jones Made. Beautiful cover on that one. I've had this one for literally years and I very much love it. But these are all Philip K. Dick. Here's another American one, an Ace one, Dr. Blood Money, or How We Got Along After the Bomb. Here's a Pan, bit of a beaten up old copy, but it's the only one I've got for Galactic Pot Healer. I did try and round up all my Philip K. Dick, and then I remembered that I've got some in a vintage door, which I can't get to my door books at the moment, sadly. This is one I got fairly recently. This is Del Rey, the best of Philip K. Dick, with an introduction by John Brunner. Big old book, that one. Back to the British. Spear, Counterclock World, and you see these are far from uniform. These are absolutely all over the place publisher wise. Vintage Penguin now, Man in the High Castle. I'm still after the first Penguin of this one, but it goes for about £20, and I've yet to come across a really nice one. But this is like the mid-70s copy of Man in the High Castle. These Triad Panther ones, I remember these, and a lot of these once again are first British paperback originals in a lot of cases. Or the first time that they've been in print in years. And I got very lucky with a lot of these Panther ones lately. And they do look lovely, very similar to the Ballards. And as I said before, if you collect one publisher, it can be super rewarding. And if you collect one author, even more so, because sometimes you get doubles of the particular book, but I don't think that matters. I don't mind having extras of certain books because, I'd like to bung a few in my bag if I'm going away, and you can get through something like this in a day, can't you? So, when I go on holiday, it's usually an 8-book affair. Scanner Darkly. Just so much cool stuff. And Philip K. Dick is just one of those authors that when you see him, if the book's in pretty nice condition, it's probably worth picking up, to be honest. He is highly, highly collectible in any edition, particularly hardback and these paperback originals. Cool stuff. So there we are. That's like a little cross section of the sorts of things that I enjoy collecting. And I think, you too will find real joy in taking up vintage paperback collecting as a hobby, because it's so rewarding. And don't forget, you can actually read the books. You don't need to just admire their cover artwork. They do have a secondary purpose, and that is that they tell a really good story. Real tips, if you decide to collect a certain thing, an author, a publisher, whatever, do your research. There's so much out there nowadays online. I've got stacks of resources on my channel, so there's plenty of educational videos out there for you to have a look at. Don't forget there's others. There's Gary Levisi in the States, and there's a few others now, Outlaw Bookseller, doing videos on old books and vintage paperbacks in particular. So become knowledgeable on your subject, collect what you actually enjoy reading, and you'll get an awful lot out of it. So there we go. So I do hope you've enjoyed that little look at vintage paperbacks. If you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it that thumbs up. Do please hit the subscribe button if you're not already for regular vintage paperback content. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.